"They're beating my brother." The 8-year-old boy screamed at a man the whole neighborhood feared. Malik Johnson, barefoot in the rain, stood before Iron Walker, a biker with scars, tattoos, and a past people whispered about. The kind of man parents warned their kids to avoid. But Malik wasn't running away. He was running toward the danger. Behind him, his brother's screams echoed from an abandoned warehouse. Iron cut his engine, looked down at the trembling child, and saw something rarer than fear. He saw courage. Stay with us to see how one cry changed a man, a family, and an entire neighborhood. Subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Cold rain pressed down on the south side of the city, turning cracked asphalt into dark mirrors and pulling the streetlights into long, trembling reflections. Malik Johnson sat at the small kitchen table, his feet dangling inches above the floor, tracing circles in a puddle of spilled water with his sock. The apartment smelled faintly of burnt rice and damp clothes that never fully dried. The walls were thin-stained, the color of old smoke, and the radiator knocked in uneven bursts like it was arguing with itself. Outside, the rain fell harder, drumming against the window in a steady, relentless rhythm. Malik was 8 years old, small for his age, with deep brown skin and tight black curls that refused to stay flat no matter how often his mother smoothed them down. His eyes were too big for his face, dark and watchful, the kind of eyes that missed nothing because they had learned early that paying attention mattered. He wore an oversized hoodie that had once belonged to his older brother, the sleeves rolled twice at the wrists, frayed at the cuffs. Across the room, his mother, Sarah Johnson, sat motionless on the edge of the couch. She was 34, but looked older now, her frame thin and folded inward, as if she were trying to take up less space in the world. Her hair, once thick and carefully braided, hung loose and unwashed around her shoulders, strands of black streaked with early gray. Her skin had lost its warmth, dulled by exhaustion and months of sleepless nights. Sarah stared at the blank television screen, though it wasn't turned on her eyes, unfocused, fixed on something Malik couldn't see. 3 months earlier, Malik's father had walked out with a single duffel bag and a door slam that echoed longer than it should have. Since then, something inside Sarah had gone quiet. She still cooked, still breathed, still sat in the same places, but it was as if her voice had been buried under layers of shock and grief. Malik had learned not to ask too many questions. Andre had taught him that. Andre Johnson was 16, tall and lean, his shoulders already broadening into adulthood. He had Malik's same dark eyes, but where Malik's held worry, Andre's carried responsibility. He worked part-time at a grocery store after school, his hands often smelling of cardboard and cleaning solution. His knuckles roughened by work he pretended didn't tire him. Andre smiled easily around. Malik joked more than necessary and never complained within earshot of their mother. Tonight he'd left an hour earlier than usual, pulling on a thin jacket and promising he'd be back soon. At first, Malik thought the sound outside was thunder. A sharp crack followed by another. But then it came again, higher this time, raw and uneven. Malik's body stiffened. His fingers froze against the table. It was a scream. Not the kind of scream Andre made when he burned his hand on the stove or stubbed his toe on the coffee table. This one was jagged, torn from somewhere deep and painful. Malik's heart began to race, each beat loud in his ears. He stood so quickly his chair tipped backward, clattering against the linoleum. Mom, Malik whispered, his voice barely cutting through the rain. "Mom, did you hear that Sarah didn't move?" Another scream sliced through the night, closer, now echoing off brick and metal. Malik knew that voice, the way he knew his own breathing. His chest tightened until it hurt. "That's Andre," he said louder this time. "Mom, that's Andre." Sarah turned her head slowly, like it weighed too much for her neck to carry. Her eyes passed over Malik without fully landing. "He's fine," she murmured, her voice flat, distant. "Sit down. Finish your homework." Malik felt something cold settle in his stomach. Andre was not fine. Malik knew it with a certainty that made his hands shake. He waited, hoping his mother would stand up, grab her coat, do something. She didn't. She turned back toward the blank television, her face empty again. Malik swallowed hard. He backed away from the table and moved quietly to the door, his heart hammering so loudly he was sure it could be heard outside. He pulled it open, and the rain hit him instantly, soaking his socks, chilling his bare feet. He hadn't even thought to put on shoes. The neighborhood was dark, lit by only a few working streetlights. Most of them had been broken for years. No one fixed things here unless they absolutely had to. The old warehouse loomed 2 blocks down its rusted metal walls, blotched with graffiti and rain. Everyone avoided it. Everyone knew the older boys hung out there, the ones who laughed too loud and hurt people for fun. Malik ran. His feet slapped against the wet concrete each step, sending pain shooting up his legs, but he didn't slow down. Another scream echoed, followed by laughter. Malik's throat burned as tears streamed down his face, mixing with rain. Halfway down the block, the low rumble of a motorcycle engine cut through the noise of the storm. A black bike rolled into view, its headlights slicing through the rain like a blade. The man riding it looked like something out of a nightmare Malik had once had. He was huge, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a leather vest despite the cold. His arms were thick and corded with muscle, covered in faded tattoos that crawled up his neck and disappeared beneath his collar. Caleb Iron Walker had a face carved from hard lines and old scars. A thick beard shadowed his jaw, peppered with gray, and his hair was pulled back into a short, rough knot at the nape of his neck. His eyes were pale and sharp, the kind that made people look away first. Grown-ups whispered his name. Kids were warned about men like him. Malik didn't think. He ran straight into the street. The motorcycle screeched as Iron slammed the brakes, the bike skidding to a stop inches from Malik's small body. For a moment, the world held its breath. Rain dripped from Iron's beard. The engine growled beneath him. "What the hell are you doing, kid?" Iron growled, his voice rough, edged with danger. Malik looked up, trembling water streaming down his face. He had never seen anyone this close who looked so dangerous. His knees threatened to buckle, but he stayed where he was. "They're beating my brother." Malik said the words breaking apart as they left his mouth. "They're going to kill him." Iron stared down at him, expression unreadable. "Please," Malik whispered, stepping closer, grabbing the edge of Iron's leather vest with both hands. "He's all I have. Please." For the first time in years, Iron Walker felt something inside his chest crack. Iron Walker looked down at the small hands gripping his leather vest. They were trembling knuckles, pale against dark skin, holding on like the world would end if he let go. Rain slid down Iron's face, cold and sharp, tracing old scars he rarely thought about anymore. He should have pulled away. He should have told the kid to move to get out of the street before he got himself killed. That was what men like Iron did, kept moving, kept distance. But Malik's eyes locked onto his wide and desperate, carrying a fear Iron recognized too well. Iron cut the engine. The sudden silence felt heavier than the rain. Malik flinched at the quiet, then looked up again, as if afraid Iron might vanish. Iron swung one thick leg off the bike and stood. Up close, he was even larger, well over 6 feet, shoulders broad beneath the soaked leather arms thick with muscle, earned through years of fights and factory work. His beard was coarse and uneven, dark with streaks of gray, and his face was carved into hard planes by time, violence, and regret. Where Iron asked. Malik blinked. "What? Where's your brother?" Malik pointed down the block with a shaking arm. "The warehouse. The old one. Please." Iron followed Malik's finger. He could already hear it now. Faint laughter carried on the rain, the dull sound of something hitting flesh. His jaw tightened. He'd heard those sounds before. Too many times. "Stay behind me," Iron said, already walking. "And don't let go unless I tell you." Malik nodded so fast, his chin nearly hit his chest. They moved through puddles and shadows, Malik struggling to keep up as Iron's long strides ate the distance. The warehouse rose ahead of them, its metal siding streaked with rust and rain graffiti smeared across it like scars. A single light burned inside, flickering weakly. Every instinct in Iron told him what he would find behind that door. He hated that part of himself for knowing. The laughter grew louder as they reached the side entrance. Iron could make out voices now, teenage cruel, careless. Malik pressed closer to Iron's leg, his small body shaking. Iron lifted one hand and placed it briefly on Malik's head, rough fingers pressing down gently. "Don't look unless you have to," he said. His voice was low, steady, the voice of a man who had learned how to sound calm even when he wasn't. Iron took one step back. Then he kicked. The door didn't creak or resist. It exploded inward with a deafening crash, metal shrieking as hinges tore loose and slammed against concrete. The sound ripped through the warehouse like a gunshot. Laughter died instantly. Inside, everything froze. Andre lay on the ground near the center of the room, his jacket half torn from his body, his face swollen and bloodied. One eye was already closing, purple and red spreading beneath it. His arms were pinned by 2 boys barely older than him. A third stood over him, Travis Cole. Travis was 17, tall and thick-built, with a square jaw and pale skin flushed with adrenaline. His blonde hair was shaved close on the sides, longer on top, plastered to his forehead with rain and sweat. His mouth was set in a crooked grin that spoke of confidence, born from never facing consequences. The grin vanished when he saw Iron. "Holy," Travis breathed. The boys holding Andre let go and stumbled backward, eyes wide. One bolted for the back exit without a word. The other followed, slipping on wet concrete in his panic. Their footsteps echoed and disappeared. Iron stepped fully into the light. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He simply stood there, rain dripping from his shoulders, eyes fixed on Travis. The air between them tightened thick with something primal and dangerous. Malik slipped past Iron and dropped to his knees beside Andre. "Andre," he whispered, hands shaking as he touched his brother's shoulder. "I'm here." "I got help. You're okay." Andre groaned, his eyes fluttering open. He looked at Malik, confusion crossing his face, then fear. "Malik, what are you?" "I'm here," Malik repeated, his voice breaking. "I'm here." Travis swallowed hard. "Look, man," he said, holding up his hands. "This ain't your business. We were just—" Iron took one step forward. That was all it took. Travis backed up until his shoulders hit the wall. Iron's eyes never left his face. They were pale, almost gray in the warehouse light, empty in a way that promised no mercy if pushed further. You touch him again, Iron said quietly, and you'll spend the rest of your life remembering this moment. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried the weight of things already done, of lines already crossed. Travis nodded frantically. I swear, we're done. Iron didn't respond. He didn't need the words. Behind him, Malik struggled to help Andre sit up. Andre winced, blood dripping from his lip onto Malik's sleeve. Malik didn't notice. He wrapped his arms around his brother, holding him like he might disappear if he let go. I thought I was too late, Malik whispered. I thought you weren't, Andre said hoarsely. He closed his eyes, pressing his forehead against Malik's hair. You weren't. Iron turned away from Travis and looked at the brothers. Something twisted in his chest at the sight of them, one battered and broken, the other too young to be this brave. He remembered another warehouse, another night, another boy who hadn't been saved in time. He shoved the memory down. Can you walk, Iron? Asked Andre. Andre nodded weakly. Good, Iron said. Let's get you out of here. They moved toward the door, Malik supporting Andre's weight with his small body, determination etched into every step. Iron followed behind them, placing himself between the brothers and the rest of the warehouse. Travis slid down the wall, collapsing onto the floor once Iron passed him. His hands shook as he wiped blood from his mouth, his grin gone for good. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but something had already changed. Morning crept into the apartment through a cracked window that never quite closed, carrying the smell of wet concrete and rusted metal. The rain had stopped sometime before dawn, leaving the neighborhood washed raw and quiet, as if it were holding its breath after what had happened. Andre lay on the narrow couch, his long frame awkwardly folded to fit. His face was swollen now that the adrenaline had faded. One eye darkened, nearly shut, his lower lip split and crusted with dried blood. He was 16, but looked older in moments like this. His jaw clenched against pain, his shoulders tense as if bracing for another blow that wasn't coming. His hands that usually stacked boxes at the grocery store and counted change at the register, trembled slightly when he tried to sit up. Malik hovered near him, refusing to leave his side. He had changed into dry clothes, but his oversized hoodie still hung off one shoulder, the fabric stretched thin at the elbows. He watched Andre's breathing like it was something fragile that might break, if he looked away for too long. Sarah Johnson stood near the kitchen counter, her back straight for the first time in months. She was tall and naturally slender. Her dark skin stretched tight over sharp cheekbones that once gave her a striking beauty people used to comment on. Her hair was pulled back into a loose, uneven bun, strands escaping to frame her face. She looked tired, bone-deep tired, but her eyes were awake now, sharp, with a fear that had finally found somewhere to land. When the knock came at the door, Sarah flinched. Malik froze. Andre's eyes widened. The door opened slowly, and Iron Walker filled the doorway. He looked out of place inside the small apartment, his broad shoulders nearly brushing both sides of the frame. He'd traded his leather vest for a plain dark jacket, but there was no hiding what he was. His beard was trimmed shorter than the night before, gray more noticeable in daylight, his face still marked by old scars that suggested a life built on hard edges. He held a small paper bag in one hand. I came to check on him, Iron said, nodding toward Andre. His voice was quieter than Malik remembered, rough but careful. Make sure he didn't need a doctor. Sarah studied him closely. Fear flickered across her face, followed by something else, gratitude she didn't quite trust yet. We cleaned him up, she said. No broken bones, I think. Iron stepped inside, moving slowly, deliberately, like he didn't want to scare anyone. He knelt beside the couch, his large hands gentle as he examined Andre's bruises with a practiced eye. "You're lucky," Iron muttered. "Another 10 minutes, maybe less, and this would have gone bad." Andre swallowed. "Thank you," he said quietly. Iron nodded once, as if embarrassed by the words. Over the next few days, Iron kept coming back. At first, Malik didn't believe it. He waited by the window every afternoon, peering down at the street whenever he heard a motorcycle in the distance. Sometimes it wasn't Iron, and disappointment hit him harder than he expected. But then one evening, Iron showed up again, carrying a toolbox instead of that paper bag. The apartment had a long list of things that didn't work properly. A sink that leaked no matter how tightly it was turned off. A bedroom door that never closed all the way. A radiator that hissed and clanged like it was angry at the world. Iron fixed them without being asked. He worked in silence, sleeves rolled up forearms flexing as he tightened bolts and replaced worn parts with ones he pulled from his bag. Malik watched from a distance, at first wary, but curious. Iron noticed. "You don't have to stare," Iron said one evening, glancing over his shoulder. Malik shrugged. "You're big." Iron huffed out something that might have been a laugh. Somewhere between the second repaired hinge and the third shared dinner, cheap takeout eaten from mismatched plates, Malik stopped calling him Mister. The word slipped out without planning. "Uncle Iron," Malik said, tugging lightly on his jacket sleeve. Iron froze. He looked down at Malik, then away, jaw tightening. No one had called him that. No one had ever claimed him in that way. "You don't have to call me that," he said. "But I want to," Malik replied simply. Iron didn't argue again. A week later, Malik came home from school with his shoulders hunched and his eyes lowered. His backpack strap was torn, and there was a fresh scrape on his cheek. Andre noticed immediately. What happened? Malik hesitated. Nothing. Iron, who had been tightening a loose chair leg, straightened slowly. "That's a lie," he said, not unkindly. Malik's voice cracked. "Some kids, they said stuff." At school the next day, Iron stood outside the chain-link fence as Malik walked toward him. The other kids watched. Some whispered. A boy with a smug grin, older brother, met Iron's gaze and looked away first. Iron crouched down so he was eye level with Malik. "You didn't start it," he said. Malik shook his head. "Good," Iron said. "And you didn't run." "No." Iron placed a heavy hand on Malik's shoulder. "Here's what you need to know, kid. Sometimes you stand your ground. Sometimes you walk away. Power is knowing which one keeps you whole." Malik nodded, taking the words in like something sacred. Andre watched from the doorway that night as Iron and Malik argued over homework, then laughed over burned toast. He saw how Malik leaned into Iron without thinking how Iron instinctively positioned himself between Malik and the rest of the world. Andre understood then that Iron wasn't just passing through. He was staying. The first sign came quietly. Iron Walker noticed it one evening as he rode away from the Johnsons' apartment. A pair of headlights lingered too long at the corner, idling without purpose. The car didn't follow when he turned, but Iron felt the old awareness settle into his bones, the instinct that never really left once you learned it. Someone was watching. Someone remembered who he used to be. The second sign arrived 2 nights later. Iron was closing up the small garage where he fixed bikes for cash when the door creaked open without knocking. The smell of cigarettes came in first, then the man himself. His name was Marcus Reyes Calder, lean, sharp-featured, late 40s, with a shaved head and a jaw that always looked clenched. A thin scar ran from his left ear to the corner of his mouth, a souvenir from a bar fight years back. Reyes wore the same leather vest Iron once did the same patch stitched over the heart. "You've been hard to find," Reyes said, smiling without warmth. Iron didn't return the smile. "I've been busy." Reyes's eyes flicked over the garage, taking in the neat rows of tools, the half-restored bike on the stand. "Busy playing handyman," he said. "Heard you've been spending time with a family on the south side. A woman, 2 kids." Iron's hands stilled. The old anger flared quick and dangerous. "You didn't come here to talk about my hobbies." Reyes stepped closer, voice dropping. "The club doesn't like it when one of its own goes quiet, stops showing up, starts acting different." Iron met his gaze. "I'm not hurting anyone." "That's the problem," Reyes replied. "You used to." The threat didn't need to be spoken. It lived in the pause between them. That night, Iron sat alone on the steps outside the Johnsons' apartment, elbows on his knees, staring at the cracked pavement. He hadn't told Sarah about the visit. She was getting stronger, standing straighter, moving with purpose again, but fear still lived close to the surface of her thin frame. Her skin, warm brown under the porch light, looked healthier than it had weeks ago, and her hair was braided again, tight and neat. Iron didn't want to put that fear back in her eyes. Malik found him there. The boy padded out barefoot, hoodie zipped to his chin curls, flattened on one side from sleep. He sat beside Iron without asking, leaning his shoulder lightly against Iron's arm. "You're quiet," Malik said. Iron exhaled slowly. "You're observant." "You always say that," Malik replied. He studied Iron's face, the lines around his eyes, the way his jaw stayed tight, even when he wasn't angry. "Is it your old friends?" Iron stiffened. "What do you know about them?" "Enough," Malik said. "Andre told me. About gangs, about choices." Iron looked down at him. "Andre shouldn't be filling your head with that." Malik shook his head. "He didn't. You did. Every time you told me I get to decide who I am." The words landed heavier than any threat Reyes had made. Iron rubbed a hand over his beard. Memories rose, uninvited nights, soaked in alcohol and blood, the easy cruelty of belonging to something that asked nothing but obedience. He'd told himself it was survival. He'd told himself it was all he was good for. "What if choosing right makes things worse?" Iron asked quietly. "For you, for Andre, for your mom." Malik didn't hesitate. "Then you still choose right." Iron let out a short, humorless laugh. "That's simple, huh?" Malik shrugged. "Simple isn't easy." Inside, Sarah watched them through the screen door. She saw the way Iron hunched forward, heavy, with something he wasn't saying. She remembered the night her husband left, the way fear hollowed her out. She recognized that look. She opened the door and stepped out. "Whatever's going on," Sarah said gently, "you don't have to face it alone." Iron looked up at her. Under the porch light, she looked steadier than he remembered, still slender, but no longer folded in on herself. Her eyes were tired. Yes, but alive. "I might bring trouble here," Iron said, "if I stay." Sarah held his gaze. "Trouble finds us anyway," she replied. "At least this way we're not alone when it does." The next day, Iron went to see Reyes. The clubhouse sat at the edge of the industrial district, all concrete and shadows. Men he used to call brothers watched him walk in their faces, unreadable. Rays waited in the back, arms crossed. "You ready to come back?" Rays asked. Iron shook his head. "I'm done." Silence fell. Rays's smile faded. "There's no done." "There is for me," Iron said. His voice didn't shake. He'd expected it to. "I'm choosing something else." Rays stepped closer, eyes cold. "You walk away, you make yourself a target." Iron nodded. "I know." He walked out without looking back. That evening, Iron returned to the Johnsons' apartment later than usual. Malik was doing homework at the table, Andre resting nearby. They all looked up when Iron came in. "I won't be around as much," Iron said. "Not for a while. Things are complicated." Malik stood and walked over to him. He didn't hug him. He just looked up, eyes steady. "You chose," Malik said. Iron swallowed. "Yeah, I did." Outside, a car passed slowly, headlights lingering just a second too long. Iron Walker had made his choice, and the world had noticed. The morning Malik didn't come home on time, the air felt wrong. Sarah Johnson stood at the kitchen sink, hands submerged in cloudy dishwater, staring at the clock above the stove. She was dressed for work, simple blouse, thrift store slacks, her hair braided neatly down her back, her posture straighter than it had been months ago. Recovery had given her structure, but fear still lived close to the surface. When the minute hand passed the hour and Malik still hadn't appeared, something tight coiled in her chest. Andre noticed it too. He sat at the table with his backpack half packed, pretending to read while listening for footsteps that never came. His injuries had healed enough for school again, but a faint limp remained a reminder of how quickly safety could be stolen. Iron arrived 10 minutes later than usual. He read the room in a second, the silence, the untouched food, the way Sarah's eyes snapped to the door. "Where's Malik?" he asked. Andre shook his head. He should have been here. Iron didn't argue. He didn't reassure. He turned and was already moving back down the steps when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. A voice came through low and controlled. "We have the kid." Iron stopped breathing. "You have 1 hour," the voice continued. "Old freight lot by the river. Come alone." The line went dead. Iron stood there, phone pressed to his ear, the world narrowing to a single point. He didn't shout. He didn't panic. He turned back to Andre and Sarah, his face stripped of everything but resolve. "They took Malik," he said. Sarah's knees buckled. Iron caught her before she hit the floor. His arms steady grounding. Her skin felt cold through her sleeves, her breath shallow. Andre grabbed his jacket. "We call the cops," Andre said. Iron shook his head. "Not yet. They'll hurt him if we do." Andre stared at him, jaw clenched. "Then what?" Iron met his gaze. "We don't do this alone." Andre hesitated only a second. Then he ran. He went door to door to neighbors who had watched and waited for years. To Mrs. Alvarez downstairs, short, broad-shouldered silver hair, cropped close eyes sharp, with the memory of a son lost to street violence. To Mr. Jenkins, across the way, retired dock worker, heavyset, quiet, with hands that still remembered strength. To Lena Brooks, the young woman on the corner, with the pit bull she trained like a family member, all patience and discipline. "They took my brother," Andre said to each of them. "We need help." And for the first time, people opened their doors. By the time Iron reached the freight lot, the sun was low painting rusted containers in long shadows. The place smelled of oil and river water. Malik sat on a folding chair near the center wrists, tied but unharmed, his hoodie torn. His face was pale eyes, wet, but he held himself upright, chin lifted the way Iron had taught him. Reyes stood nearby, jacket open, hands loose at his sides. He looked pleased. "You came," he said. "I said I would." Iron replied, stepping forward. He kept his hands visible, empty. His heart pounded, but his voice stayed level. "Let him go." Reyes laughed softly. "You really think you get to walk away, teach lessons, build a new life?" Iron took another step. "This ends with me." Reyes raised a hand, and the men around him shifted. Then a shout cut through the lot. "Get away from him!" Andre emerged first, breathless eyes burning. Behind him came the neighborhood, dozens of people fanning out, not charging, not threatening, just present. Mrs. Alvarez with a phone held high, recording. Mr. Jenkins carrying a length of pipe he'd never swung but was willing to hold. Lena with her dog at heel, calm and focused. Reyes' smile faltered. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, glancing at the phones. "No," Mrs. Alvarez said. "This is the truth." Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called after all. Reyes assessed the scene, calculating. He lifted his hands. "Untie the kid," he told his men. Malik's bonds fell away. He stood and ran straight to Iron, burying his face in Iron's chest. Iron wrapped him up, shielding him, breathing again. The men melted back. Reyes retreated with them, eyes locked on Iron, a promise of unfinished business lingering in the look. They didn't return. In the weeks that followed, something changed. People talked. They checked on each other. They showed up. Iron stayed quietly, consistently. He helped Andre with school applications. He fixed bikes for kids who couldn't pay. He listened. Years later, the building by the river wasn't empty anymore. Stone's Haven stood where rust once ruled, bright walls, open doors, a place for kids to learn and rest and be safe. Malik volunteered after school, taller, now voice steady. Andre studied social work, planning to come back. Sarah ran the front desk, her smile easy, her life her own again. Iron watched from the doorway, hands in his pockets. The neighborhood had woken up, and it stayed awake. Sometimes the miracle doesn't come as a voice from the sky or a sudden flash of light. Sometimes it comes as a child, brave enough to ask for help, a stranger willing to stay, or a neighborhood that finally chooses love over fear. God works through ordinary people every day, through small acts of courage, compassion, and choice. In a world that teaches us to walk away, choosing to stand up can change a life. And sometimes it can change an entire community. If this story touched your heart, let it remind you that you matter, your choices matter, and kindness is never wasted. Share this story with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment below about where you're watching from and what this story meant to you. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing stories of courage, redemption, and light. May God bless you, protect you, and guide your steps. May He give you strength when you're afraid and remind you that even in the darkest night, miracles are still possible.